I'd like to tell you a story called Issunboshi. It's my favorite story to tell at the museum. It's one of the most well-known Japanese fairy tales. And also, I love to tell it because we have so many objects in the museum that relate to this story, that you can see how much of Japanese culture is both here at the museum and in an old fairy tale. Now, in English, when we start a fairy tale, we say, "Once upon a time." In Japanese, people say, "Mukashi, mukashi," which means long, long ago. So, mukashi, mukashi, long, long ago, there lived an old man and an old woman. They lived in a small village of poor farmers, but they were happy enough, except for one thing. They had no child of their own, and they were very lonely. So every day they went to the Buddhist temple in the village and prayed, "Please, may we have a child that we can take care of." And one day, as they were walking back, there in the grass, right in front of their little house, was a red bundle of cloth. And when they reached down and opened the bundle, there was a baby inside, a cute little boy. There was something very unusual about him, even though he had a nice, cute little face, fat little arms, chubby little legs, very healthy, but he was as big as your thumb. And so they realized, this is the child we were given. We will love him and take care of him, and we will name him Issunboshi. Issun means 1 inch, and Boshi means boy. So basically his name was Inch Boy. And Issunboshi, from that day forward, every day, he grew stronger. He grew smarter. He grew more adventurous. He grew kinder. He grew everything that a young man should be, except bigger. He was still always the size of your thumb. So when he turned 16, which was old enough to be an adult in those days, he said to his parents, "It's time for me to go out and seek my fortune. I am going to go to the distant capital city, and I am going to become a samurai and serve the lord of the castle there." Now here we have some things that a samurai needs, because a samurai, as you probably know, is a Japanese warrior. A samurai is noble, brave, loyal, and skilled. Skilled in both the arts of war, as we see with these samurai swords, and later in the samurai period, guns, and also in the arts of peace, like poetry, calligraphy. None of these things were something that a poor farmer knew anything about. And in fact, in the ordinary course of things, at that time, in that place, the only way to become a samurai was to be born the son of a samurai. But Issunboshi was no ordinary person, and he had a very extraordinary dream in his heart. And he wouldn't give it up, so finally his parents agreed. He would need to make this long trip by river. It was a shallow river. He needed a boat and a big pole to push that boat down the river. Now his parents didn't have any money to go get him these things, so they looked around the house. And they found a wooden soup bowl, perfect for a boat. And they found something else they used every day to eat for the pole. You might have guessed it, a chopstick. But the one thing a samurai must carry at all times, and only a samurai is allowed to carry, is a sword. What could they give for a sword? His mother looked around. One of her needles was just the right size. And so he stuck the needle sword in his belt, and he got in his boat and he pushed himself all the way to the capital city. And there he saw this huge, magnificent castle with a big gate guarded by 2 enormous guards on either side, standing like this. And he looked up at them, and then he bowed very low to show his respect. And he said to them, "I am Issunboshi. I am here to serve the lord of the castle as a brave, noble, and loyal samurai. Please let me in." Those guards, they didn't even seem to notice him, but he didn't give up. Day and night, as the guards changed, he kept announcing himself in that same way, "I am Issunboshi." And finally they heard him, and one of them said, "Well, let's bring him to our master. Maybe he could use a little amusement." And so they brought Issunboshi in to the room where the lord of the castle was sitting. And when he saw Issunboshi, he thought to himself, "You know, I really don't need a samurai who's as big as my thumb to fight for me." But he said to Issunboshi, "You look about 16, boy." "Yes," said Issunboshi. "Well, I have a daughter just your age. She lives here in the castle. She's the only one her age. She's very lonely. Would you be her companion? Would you play with her and spend time with her every day?" Issunboshi bowed as low as he could. Of course, a samurai's job is to do whatever his master needs. Of course I will do that. And so he was prepared when they brought him into the room to meet the princess, but he wasn't prepared for how beautiful she was. With her long black hair and her beautiful silk kimono, she was sitting playing the koto, something that young ladies in Japan are still taught to do. Beautiful music was coming from it. He liked her right away. And from that day on, they spent every day together, and soon she found him the most wonderful thing in her life too. They just did everything, and because he was so small, she carried him in the sleeve of her kimono, which has a little pocket, again, which people still carry things in, usually maybe some Kleenex, but in this case it was Issunboshi. Now one day in spring, the princess decided she wanted to go take a picnic lunch to see the cherry blossom trees. Now because she was a princess, she couldn't just walk like you or I out to the park. She had to travel in a kago, a palanquin, with 4 strong men carrying it. And the doors closed so ordinary people wouldn't see her. And she had to be surrounded by a big group of brave, strong samurai with their swords in their belts, ready to protect her against anyone who would try to harm her. And as usual, she had Issunboshi in her pocket. Now, just as they were sitting down to a delicious lunch, the ground began to shake, and there was this sound coming from the distance, and they looked up to where the mountains were behind them, and down from the mountain, it wasn't an earthquake as they first thought. It was an oni. Now an oni is a Japanese creature of folklore and mythology. We sometimes translate it as demon, as ogre, as monster. But just imagine, he had green skin. He was as tall as 5 men. He had horns on his head. He had fangs in his mouth and claws on his hands. He wore nothing but a tiger skin as a loincloth. And he carried in his hand a huge club. Now, oni everybody knew, sometimes came down from the mountains when they were hungry to look for someone to take back with them to their mountain home and keep until they were ready to eat them. And their favorite food, everybody knew, was princesses. So all the brave samurai, they drew their swords and they looked up at that huge Oni. And as he brought his club down to hit them, you know what those brave samurai did? They ran away. They were not so brave when there was really some danger there. They left the princess all alone. How could they do that? But was she really all alone? No, she was not, because in her pocket was Issunboshi. And he jumped out and he looked up at that huge Oni and he said, "I am Issunboshi. If you think you're going to take this princess, you're going to have to fight me first." And he drew his little needle sword. And the Oni looked down at him. "Fight you? I'm not going to fight you, little man. I am going to eat you for a snack. And then I'll save the princess for dessert." And with that, he popped Issunboshi right into his mouth, all in one gulp, without even chewing. And Issunboshi went down, down, down into the stomach of the Oni. Now, I told you Issunboshi was brave. You've seen that. But I've also told you he was smart. He thought, what can I do? And he took that little needle sword and he began from the inside of the Oni's stomach to go jab, 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 jab. And the Oni started to go, "Ooh, ooh, that hurts, get out." "Nope, nope, 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 nope. Please get out." "Okay, if you promise you will never hurt this princess or her father or any of us in his kingdom ever again, then I'll get out." "All right, just do it and quick," said the Oni. And Issunboshi ran back up and the Oni opened his mouth. Issunboshi jumped back down. He turned around to see the Oni had already run away. He'd run away so fast that he left on the ground that huge club of his. The princess looked at that club and looked at Issunboshi. She said, "Issunboshi, haven't you heard that an Oni's club is magic? That if you place your hand on it and make a wish, that whatever you wish will come true? I think you should be the one to make the wish. You're the one who saved me. Please make your wish." And Issunboshi put his hand on that club. And I bet you can guess what he wished. He wished to be big. And as soon as he did, he started to grow and grow and grow and grow until he was standing there, a big, brave, strong samurai. So that now anyone looking at him could see what had always been true from the very beginning on the inside, that Issunboshi had the heart of a samurai. Now, because I told you this is a fairy tale, you know how the story ends. The princess's father made Issunboshi the general, the head of all his armies. And Issunboshi and the princess, they got married and they lived happily ever after.